is in second place overall. Spaniard Alejandro Valverde won stage 10, and at only 25 years of age, his enormous potential is quickly becoming a reality. But maybe today will be a day of resurrection. Yesterday, the T-Mobile boys certainly looked like they could use some divine intervention. As once more we head into the Alps over the historic Galibier. He pushed his team hard. Today, Lance pushes him harder. Stage 11 of the 2005 Tour de France, next on OLN. This is the 2005 Tour de France in prime time, and today's stage 11 is all about climbing. The first challenge, 16 miles up the side of the Col de Madeleine. And everything is beating down on the peloton today. The pressure of discovery and Lance Armstrong's destruction yesterday. The pressure of climbing the Col de Madeleine and then the Col de Galibier in a little while. And the pressure to get back into the green jersey race. Thor Hushovd of Crédit Agricole may be getting word that Tom Bonin crashed again. And who knows what that could do to his status. So he's going out for sprinting glory, trying to get to the top of this first climb and survive to the sprint.
Thor Hushovd taking up the tempo. He was with Dumoulin from the AG2R squad and left him behind on about halfway up this Col de Madeleine. There's green points on offer over the top of this and down in the next valley. So Thor Hushovd going out, trying to get over this hill. I think that his main motivation, because he was dropped early on all the climbs so far in the Tour, was to avoid missing the time limit. And when we look at the climbs to come and the nature of this athlete, Thor Hushovd, a pure sprinter, not a climber at all, and he needs a big lead to get over the mountain. If he can stay with the peloton, number one, he can get some points for the green jersey, the sprinters competition. Number two, he will not presumably miss the time limit, which will be pretty tough to make in today's stage. It's going to be very, very hard.
Survivor Borneo, Season 1. The day the Tour de France ends, it begins. 16 strangers, 39 days, only one torch in the end. The first unforgettable season, Survivor lives on OLN, premiering July 24th. And here the peloton. Lance Armstrong back in yellow, so easy to spot, surrounded by Team Discovery. And their initial response to what has been a pretty solid break by a good group of cyclists is to just sit tight. Now, you'd have to figure with the big deficits that Lance and Team Discovery have created, the teams would have to take gambles like we've already seen on this first climb.
Here's the yellow jersey on the graphic below. You can see 5 minutes behind. That's our leader, Thor Hushovd. 40 seconds behind him is Dumoulin, who's been dropped. And this is the chase group, 4 minutes and 27 seconds behind the leader, Hushovd. And so they're only about 33 seconds ahead of the Discovery-led peloton with Lance Armstrong in the yellow jersey. This is a very high-powered group. A lot of very good bike racers, GC contenders. Oscar Pereiro, Chris Horner, Vino Kurov, Santiago Botero, and Mancebo. Robert Heras also. This is a very, very dangerous group. So you can see the damage being done by the tempo set by the Discovery team. They're not panicking yet. But this is a very tough situation, and depending how the riders respond, Lance Armstrong could probably chase him down by himself if he wanted to attack on this climb. He'd rather wait and see if his teammates can see the gap come down a little bit to this very dangerous breakaway out on the roads in the Tour de France. They have not laid down arms. This is an aggressive stage and a tough climb. Discovery doing a great job so far. They're solid at the front and united in the chase. This is going to be a very exciting stage.
This is the always painful back of the peloton on a climb like this. The names that jump out at you in that breakaway as you look at Thor Hushovd again are Mancebo, who proved himself in the first Alpine mountain climb yesterday, staying with Lance almost till the end. But then you have Vinokurov and Heras, who are trying to have a comeback day after being so badly dropped yesterday.
If you look at Mancebo's GC at the end of yesterday's stage, he's 7th, 4 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. So Lance wouldn't have too much of a problem giving him a minute away, but this is early. You don't want this big a group to get too much time early in the stage.
Bob, it's time for the Honda highlight. And what did they pick? There were so many images to choose from. It's this. Yaroslav Popovich.
Taking up the reins of the race there for that man, number one. They felt that there was pain in the group, the damage had been done, and Lance Armstrong vanquishing a number of his pre-race rivals. There's very few of them left.
Yellow jersey number 72 in the career of Lance Armstrong. That's our Honda highlight from stage 10.
That's a pretty good highlight right there. I think that's the best so far in this year's tour.
Now, there's a lot more to climbing to come in this stage. Chris Carmichael was here talking about yesterday, and Lance Armstrong saying he wished that the climb to Courchevel was a little bit steeper. That was about 6%. Well, the Peloton and Lance is going to get their wish today. This one maxes out at 9.5%, so 30% tougher than yesterday at some points during the climb. Back to the break from the Peloton, and this is the break that has power. That's Vinokurov charging at the front, and Sabo's in there, Roberto Heras is in there, and now they all got to take their turn at the front.
Just about a minute in front of the chasing group right now. That's Mancebo on the front. Vinokurov just pulled over. And this group is making solid progress. They're cutting into the lead of Torhushov, who escaped early, is a sprinter, not a climber at all. So one presumes that this group will be sweeping up to Torhushov before too long. Chris Horner there on the wheel of Roberto Heras just about to come through.
We're motorcycling up the Col de Madeleine. Historic and one of two beyond category climbs we'll make today in stage 11 of the 2005 Tour de France. We have one lone gun who's known as a sprinter leading the 11th stage of this tour, but this group of 8, this gang of 8, has pulled away from the Peloton. Lance Armstrong has minutes lead on everybody in there, but this is a group of men who have proven themselves in a stage race like this. Alexander Vinokurov from T-Mobile, Mancebo from Illes Baleares, who was one of the final 4 finishers yesterday, and then you've got Roberto Heras, who was one of those crushed by the pace yesterday. So they've pulled away, and I guess the confidence of Team Discovery has to be maddening to the group because they have the depth. They've got 7 men at the front. They can set the tempo behind that breakaway, and obviously they've decided that this first mountain, Col de Madeleine, is not a place where you want to track them down just yet.
Mancebo is the most dangerous rider in the breakaway. He's 4 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. None of these athletes on their own have been able to disturb the Discovery team, so they're trying to do it all together, and this is a very, very aggressive move.
Phonak breaking away without Floyd Landis. Now, if you're looking for more behind-the-scenes tour coverage, sign up for the Daily Tour, an exclusive partnership between OLN and Active.com. You'll receive daily email updates, insightful commentary, and the chance to win great cycling prizes. Get the free Daily Tour newsletter by visiting either OLNTV.com or Active.com today. At Active.com, be sure to check out Tour de France coverage and the daily blogs. Now, take us inside the world of Phonak, Bob. We talked about the fact that, you know, they weren't sure who the leader was going to be, whether it was Ribeiro or Floyd Landis, and here they are going out in this breakaway without Floyd Landis. Is that pretty much of a diss?
Well, Floyd was the best of the bunch in yesterday's stage, and he's in 10th on GC. Phonak is a team that has more ambition than that. They don't want a rider to go through the motions in the Tour just to finish in the top 10 on GC. That's not what a big-budget team like Phonak has come to the Tour to do. They want to win stages and have a rider on the Peloton. They had high hopes at the beginning. The GC doesn't look great, but they're not giving up just yet. Santiago Botero and Oscar Pereiro, very aggressive riders. They've gone out. They ignited this breakaway. Vinokurov went with them, try to save a little bit of face after getting annihilated yesterday by Lance Armstrong. So for Team Phonak, they haven't achieved their objectives yet in the Tour. And if Floyd can move up to the top 5, that would be decent, but they want some stage wins and a podium perhaps. So Botero and Oscar Pereiro taking the attack. You never know. If they get caught by the chase by Discovery, maybe we'll see Floyd Landis attack.
Just a refresher course on those graphics at the bottom of the screen. We give you time into the race. We give you kilometers and miles to go lower left. Right now it's miles. And then we break you through the lead Then the chases, and how many splinter groups there are in front of the peloton. If there's 3, there'd be 3 chases. Chase 1, chase 2, chase 3. And then eventually you get to the peloton where you see the little yellow jersey. That tells you where, in this case, where Lance Armstrong is wearing the yellow jersey, where he is. And the number next to the peloton is the time difference from the front of the peloton, or the main chase group, and the very first man, in this case, Thor Hushovd of Credit Agricole.
Long line of riders now. Real pressure being set by the Discovery team. Lance hasn't had to do anything yet. Take a look at the stage facts brought to you by AMD. This is the climb they're on right now, Col de Madeleine, HC, that's beyond category. That's 2,000 meters above sea level. The Telegraph comes next, and then the Col de Galibier, another climb, HC, the highest in the Tour.
Only 8,007 feet, 8,700 feet above sea level. That's the highest this year's Tour will get.
One of the riders from the Liberty Seguro squad up there.
It's Boloki.
Yoshiba Boloki, not enjoying the Tour. Seemed to have a little bit of life in his legs. He's sitting in a decent position on GC. A lot better than he has ridden for a long time. He's 21st now. Had a decent day yesterday. Nothing like we saw him do in before his big crash a couple of years ago in the Tour, where his pelvis was broken, his leg, shoulder blade, arm, and Boloki's still struggling now to regain the form he had before being dropped, and really suffering there, going through a lot of agony. Yoshiba Boloki still looking for the form that he hasn't been able to find since a really traumatic crash in the Tour in 2003.
Can you imagine some knucklehead actually picking him to win the stage yesterday?
That wasn't a bad pick, because an athlete that's spent so long in the hinterlands of no form, when they regain their form, and they've been a champion, they have incredible motivation. They know what it's felt like to be unable to do your job even decently, and Boloki hasn't quite got there yet. But hold on to that, Al. Hold on to that. I think
I'm a bottom line guy. It was a bomb pick.
Bottom line, it was a bomb.
It wasn't good. The peloton all strung out now. There will be a huge rapid descent, and it was an absolute thrill yesterday to be on the bikes at 60 miles an hour going down the mountains of the climb in stage 10. There you see Floyd Landis 10th. This is now the general classification. There's a lot to read down there, but it updates you on just about everything you need to know about the race. There's American Chris Horner back to European racing. 9:05 back of Lance Armstrong, and he is part of that Mancebo 8-man break.
Now you can see the riders starting to get shelled off of the back of the group. Now this is where you want to spend your day if you can. A lot of riders will regroup behind that and try to limit their losses and just make it to the finish line here in Briançon within the time limit. It's going to be pretty tight today. Not a super long stage and 2 monster climbs. And when you see an attack by some of our top GC contenders like Mancebo, Botero, and Vinokurov, you know that the chase from Discovery is going to be flat out. And it's very tough to stay in the group, and very tough to make the time limit. Thor Hushovd, I think, trying to anticipate the attacks he thought would come today, has gone out. He has a precipitous lead that is plummeting rapidly. He just needs to stay near the front group before the bottom of the last climb. And here it looks like Valverde coming back from the front. Maybe he spent a little bit too much energy yesterday. Maybe he just needs to talk to the team car. But Valverde in the white jersey not having a great day after a brilliant day yesterday.
And there are miles more to come on this first climb. As we go to break, the subway trivia question: why was the Galibier easier to climb pre-1979 than today? The riders were fitter, they were allowed to walk their bikes, they took an old road which was lower, or tour organizers instituted a maximum speed for the climb? Make your pick, and we'll have the answer when we come back. This is the Tour on OLN. Let's get to the answer of the subway trivia quiz. Why was the Galibier easier to climb pre-1979 than it is today? Riders were fitter back then. Riders were allowed to walk their bikes. Riders took the old road, which was lower. Tour organizers instituted a maximum speed for the climb. The answer is C. In 1979, a new road was laid closer to the summit, forcing riders to climb an extra 300 feet to a new height of 8,956 feet. You've got to be a real tour aficionado to pick that one up.
I don't know that easier is the right adjective for any part of the Col de Galibier, but Roberto Heras, feeling the sting of the Madeleine, dropped by his breakaway companions. Cauchioli, Horner, Botero, Torrero, and Vinokurov now have shelled Roberto Eras, and his hard times continue from yesterday. Eras went on this breakaway, one of the instigators of it, and now he's been dropped by his own Tempo. Mancebo setting a very hard pace at the front. Roberto Eras didn't look like he was under momentary difficulty. It looked like his legs had abandoned him, and I think it won't be long before he's caught by the chasing group led by that team, the Discovery team. They still have 6 men around Lance Armstrong. It seemed to be that Jaroslav Popovich, there he is, just coming in your picture, was struggling a little bit after a huge effort yesterday. 9 kilometers still to climb, and this has been an incredibly hard climb for the riders.
Day 3 in the Alps before heading toward the Pyrenees across Provence. It'll happen tomorrow. More mountain coverage at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Note the earlier time. Expanded coverage in prime time every night here on OLN at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and at 9 p.m. Pacific. Stage 12 tomorrow in the Alps. And we'll have it all for you. So some devastation already in the first of 2 climbs. We've seen Alejandro Valverde, yesterday's stage winner, back with the doctors, apparently having some sort of a stomach problem. And then let's talk about Team Oval for a moment. Kloden getting dropped yesterday. Ulrich getting dropped yesterday. Vinokurov getting dropped yesterday. The team manager of Team Oval was talking to Eurosport earlier today, and he said, in the big mountain stages, I normally like to take an assessment of my team. He said after Tuesday's results, I'd have to say we are no good. Could you imagine the team manager saying that before a key stage?
Well, Walter Godefroot, the team manager, calling it how it is. Team Mobile stinking up the Tour de France so far. Vinokurov reversing that for the moment on the roads of the Col de Madeleine. He's out on the breakaway, putting the Discovery team under a little bit of pressure. The Discovery team up to every challenge in the Tour so far. Yesterday they were spectacular, and so far on today's stage they've been able to keep the breakaway within a reasonable amount of time. So far, it's a very dangerous group containing some of our pre-race favorites, and has done tremendous damage to the field.
That was Samuel Dumoulin that we just saw a moment ago. He, a little while ago, was up in the breakaway with Thor Hushovd, who now still is out there. Hushovd dropped him, and he just fell all the way through the stage, past everybody.
He's lost 8 minutes in the last 10 Ks, and that's weighing anchor in the Tour de France for Samuel Dumoulin. Not a climber. He's more of a sprinter, so it's understandable. But this is an unbelievable effort by Discovery. Again, there's Lance Armstrong. He is in the yellow jersey. That's the peloton. 2 minutes and 40 seconds behind Thor Hushovd. The first chase, now that will be the group of riders containing Santiago Botero. They're at 1:04 behind, and the chase number 2 is the Roberto Eras. So he's coming just in front of this group, and they're going to catch him in a moment. Rasmussen still in there. Ulrich, Savodelli, Big George Hincapie, and Lance Armstrong breathing through his nostrils, still talking while riders are getting shelled. Kloden moving back into the frame, and Ivan Basso, Michael Rasmussen in the King of the Mountain jersey right in there with Jorg Jaksch. Bobby Julich riding well, Michael Bugert, the Rabobank rider, and there is Levi Leipheimer with Floyd Landis on his wheel. 2 more Americans in the top 20 on GC, top 10 I should say, besides Lance, so 3 Americans in the top 10 on GC at the start of today's stage.
Well, if you watched yesterday, it was almost as if Team Discovery put thumbtacks in the road. That's how fast guys fell off.
It was amazing, really. Once the legs went on that climb, the tempo so fast, so hard, being set by George Hincapie and Jaroslav Popovich and Jose Azevedo earlier on the climb. Almost nobody could handle it, and Lance was asking his teammates to go hard, go harder. We've got these guys on the rope. We need to do some knockout punches to the midsection, and a lot of riders losing big chunks of time. When we look down the GC, when you're 4 minutes, 16 minutes behind like Kloden and Ulrich are, after the first hard climb in the bike race, that is really discouraging. Godefroot saying, we are no good, and that's what he's referring to.
A few miles from the top of the Col de Madeleine. And there's the lone wolf, Thor Hushovd. So what's his plan?
Well, he sees that the neutral support is being asked to go up the road. That means that the chasers are less than a minute behind. So he knows that he's going to be caught by the chasing group. And these are almost pure climbers, all of them. Pereiro, Horner, Vinokurov, Botero, Mancebo. Thor Hushovd, being a sprinter, knows that they're going to go streaking right past him. If he can stay within the peloton until about 5 kilometers to go, and there's
right
the chasers, within 5 kilometers to go, he will probably be able to catch the peloton on the descent, and he will be the only sprinter that can do that. The other sprinters long gone because of the tempo, chasing a very dangerous group set by the Discovery team.
But, Bob, right now you'd have to say that with the time breaks the way they are, Discovery has kept this quote-unquote manageable.
Absolutely. They are content to let this group go, assuming that the devil wearing some green today out of the red costume.
Well, he's a sprinting devil.
He's got the green sprinter's jersey, yes. So the Tor Hushov paying no heed. He knows that he's in a world close to 80, so he's just trying to get through the stage, get to the finish. I think that the Discovery team would have been content to let the peloton go at a reasonable tempo up the first climb of two monsters in the race. And what they've had to do is chase down a very dangerous breakaway containing Mancebo, Botero, and Vinokurov. So you cannot let a group like that go away. Even though some of these riders, the best placed Mancebo at 4 minutes behind, are a long ways from Lance's lead, it's still too many guys too far from the finish line to let go up the road. And so they've put in a very hard chase that has absolutely destroyed the cohesion of the peloton, and it's going to be a very small group at the top of the Col de Madeleine.
So Hushov gambled. He's got to be a little dispirited here.
If these riders hadn't attacked, he would have gone over the top by himself, been able to go down, get the sprint points, and his gamble didn't work today.
So Vinokurov leading the way. He takes the lead now in stage 11, making his way to the top of the Col de Madeleine. Back after this on OLN. Gorgeous pictures today surrounding stage 11, starting in Courchevel, where yesterday's stage 10 finished, to Briançon. Two horrible climbs called Col de Madeleine and Col de Galibier. Very historic climbs in the Tour. As you look at the King of the Mountains jersey wearer, Michael Rasmussen, boy, did he prove himself yesterday that he deserves to wear that jersey. And we approach, or at least the peloton and the lead pack of 6 approach the top of the Col de Madeleine. A distinctive Spanish flavor to that breakaway 6. You've got Oscar Pereiro, Santiago Botero, Igor Martinez, Francisco Mancebo, and then in there as well, you've got Alexander Vinokurov and Chris Horner. Do the Spanish alliances play in at all here?
I think it's just a case of the Spanish riders being incredibly gifted climbers, and this is their stages in not tomorrow, but excuse me, there's the peloton right behind. 43 seconds. The gap seems a little bit less than that when we look at the pictures. When they come around this corner, they'll be able to see the riders in front of them. Colombian, mostly Spaniards. Roberto Eras now being dropped, was in the breakaway. Terrible tour for Eras again after last year's really disappointing tour. Came back to win the Vuelta, but he's struggling in the tour again. This year, he's been dropped by Lance's group, led by his teammates. And the Spaniards, by and large, awesome climbers, and this is a stage where they can really go out, do some attacking and shine. We see year in and year out at the Tour, Spaniards great on the climbs. Hushov now getting caught by the Discovery team, being led by Tricky Beltran and Chechu Rubiera right now. Still a lot of power left in the Discovery team for the last climb of the day, the Col de Galibier.
One of the things we were talking about yesterday with Chris Carmichael was if you're going to go, if you're going to attempt to distance yourself and break away, make sure you do it when you can get the maximum amount of time. Here, obviously, guys have to gamble because they trail Lance Armstrong's yellow jersey by so much. But you saw that breakaway 6 now is within sight of the peloton. So they're down to, what, 40 seconds? And you really wonder, was it worth it to expend as much energy as they needed to build up that 40 seconds at this point of the stage?
Horner and Mancebo now coming off the back of the group they were in, led by Botero and Pereiro. Maybe they realize that they're not getting enough time to make it worth it, so it's better to sit up, wait for the catch, and then try to regain their composure on the descent, catch their breath a little bit. Here we go up to the breakaway. Igor Martinez still hanging in there, but the original 9 now down to 4 men. 2 Fonak, Botero, the Colombian, Pereiro, the Spaniard, Vinokurov, and Igor Martinez of the Euskaltel Euskadi. Generally great climbers, but haven't so far had a chance in this year's tour to really do something special. Maybe today's stage, Vinokurov putting in a lot of effort, like you said, Al, to gain a slight advantage, a small amount of time. And if Jose Azevedo or Chechu Rubiera really make a hard effort, they would catch them in just a matter of a few hundred meters or a couple of kilometers.
And Tor Hushov has really come apart. It was a valiant effort, but I guess that's why sprinters are known as sprinters and climbers are known as climbers.
Well, on Tor's behalf, he will get over the top of the climb, not too far behind the chasing group led by the Discovery team and way ahead of all the other sprinters in the bike race.
This will be the thinnest air that the riders breathe in the Tour de France. 75 miles to go on the stage. That's a long way, and another climb equal to this one.
Sandy Cassar being dropped now. That's one of the stars of French cycling and a great climber himself. One of the CSC riders also going out the back. That's Carlos Sastre. He got a wheel change a little while ago after a flat tire and struggling to find the tempo set by a number of riders still with Discovery. I guarantee you that there's no team in that small group that has more than a Discovery team. Still 7 riders left.
To 1,000 meters from the summit of the Col de Madeleine, 8 became 6, 6 became 3. The peloton putting the hammer down, covering ground like 3 men can't. 39 seconds is the separation between Discovery team, Lance Armstrong with a crick in his neck again, and what's going up near the summit.
Botero really having a hard time now maintaining the pace of Pereiro.
Look how small the peloton is.
And the damage being done is unbelievable. Valverde barely hanging in there in the white jersey. Vinokurov and Pereiro still making the tempo, and you can see Santiago Botero now having a hard time maintaining the tempo of his teammate and Alexander Vinokurov. I think we'll be down to 2 riders before the summit, but the peloton is less than 40 seconds behind. Just one switchback of climbing, and they will be on the wheels of a very dangerous breakaway. Mancebo, probably the most troublesome for the Discovery team, in 7th place on GC at the start of the day, but he's been dropped by the breakaway, so Mancebo has returned to this group right here. Levi Leipheimer still hanging in there, Floyd Landis, and Michael Rasmussen, the real revelation of the Tour so far, sitting in 2nd place, 38 seconds behind Lance Armstrong. Let's see if he sprints for these mountain points. There's only 3 guys up the road, so Rasmussen can get some more points to consolidate that polka dot jersey.
Well, before the race gets to a point like this and you see the tents and the mobile homes and all the people sitting at the side of the road, a lot of questions come to mind about what goes on up there, and most of them you do not want to know the answers to.
How many porta-johns up there?
See, that's the kind of question I'm talking about.
Flying through the corridor of noise, Vinokurov now setting a very good tempo. Must have recovered overnight, and he's having a good day so far. I'm sure that Lance hasn't even put in a hard effort yet, and the next climb is a monstrosity, the Telegraph, which is a stair step to the Galibier, 2,600 plus meters above sea level, and the highest point in this year's Tour. Botero coming through now, and Pereiro in trouble. I think this is a little sprint for the King of the Mountain points, and Botero going to go over there first. Vinokurov on his wheel. That's a nice little prize to get the King of the Mountain points on the Col de Madeleine for Santiago Botero.
Not the jersey, just points.
Just some points along the way, and Michael Rasmussen will be unchallenged for 4th place on an HC climb. I think he'll just about... There he is right at the front with Christophe Moreau. Is going to give him a little sprint for it. We'll see if Rasmussen and Moreau sprint it out here. Rasmussen, either way, will get a lot of points for the King of the Mountain jersey and be able to put that away pretty seriously here, maybe today, and it'll be hard for anybody to catch him if he gets... There's the sprint now by Moreau. Bit of a cheeky move, hasn't done one lick of work. Coming around Rasmussen. I don't know about that. That's not my favorite move of the Tour.
Is he even involved in the King of the Mountains picture?
No.
No. So what's he doing?
That's a boneheaded Frenchman move, so he gets the Knucklehead of the Day award so far.
And that's business that Discovery and Lance need not be concerned with. So they take their pace across the top of the Col de Madeleine, and now about 12 miles downhill. Down they go from above the tree line in the Col de Madeleine. 6 miles down, Alexander Vinokurov, the invader, setting the tempo across that summit. More coverage here in prime time as Botero is right there with him. Just after summiting the Col de Madeleine, Oscar Pereiro picked an odd time to grab a snack. Lost his concentration for a moment and sailed right off the course. We completely lost sight of him somehow, and amazingly, he recovered and is right back with the breakaway 4. How do you think he pulled that off? Because we lost sight of him with our cameras.
He must have, there was no damage to the machine. He must have been able to slow down enough so that he could dismount without crashing and get back on the road because he's caught up before the end of the descent. Vinokurov now struggling to match the tempo of Igor Martinez, who's caught up also. He was dropped from the breakaway at the top of the climb. He fought his way back. Pereiro crashed while having a sandwich in his mouth. Botero waiting for him a little bit. Pereiro catching back up, and now they've putting Alexander Vinokurov is having a hard time maintaining the tempo by the two Spaniards and one Colombian up the road. And these are the real angels of the mountains coming out and climbing them and descending them with aplomb and grace here. This is a great descent.
Time now for the Saab Power Descent. Let's see how Team Discovery and Lance Armstrong kept up with that four-man group.
Perfect cohesion here. The riders from the Discovery team relaying each other. The man in front will set up the corner. The riders behind will follow the perfect trajectory by Tricky Beltran right there. Jose Azevedo on his wheel, Chechu Rubiera, George Hincapie, and Lance Armstrong in the yellow jersey following his teammate.
At 60 miles an hour, that's our Saab Power Descent. Looked like it was going to pour up at the top of the cold. Now the sun is right heading down into the valley. This is a 1,500 meter or a 1,500 yard descent.
Lead climbing a little bit. 104. Discovery taking it nice and easy. Just getting down the hill. Not aggressive at all.
But don't you think when this gets aerodynamic in the relatively flat area between the two mountains, they can rip that off in no time?
Four guys would have a tough time against the whole group. Obviously, it's just the Discovery team working, but they're also swept along by the momentum of the other riders, and it's probably going to be 20 or 30, maybe 40 riders strong at the end of this descent. Some of the men dropped near the top of the last climb, the Col de Madeleine, will be able to catch back on if they do a spine-tingling, hair-raising descent. It wouldn't surprise me if Tor Hushovd, who was still nearby with a couple of Ks to go, was able to catch up the sprinters, the most fantastic descenders in the sport.
Hey, if you took a T-Mobile show of hands, 9 guys, how many raised their hand that Ulrich is still the guy they're riding for, and how many raised their hand for Vinokurov?
I don't think anybody's raising their hands.
Period, right?
Period. They just want to get through the tour. I think the only man with some fight left still seems to be Alexander Vinokurov, and he starts the day in 16th place, 6:32 behind Lance Armstrong, and I think he's trying to fight back to have a chance at a podium position in the tour. So he's still aggressive. He's still going out and attacking. Ulrich and Kloden in 8th and 9th overall seem to have given up the ghost a little bit. And if Vinokurov can recover a little bit in the stages on the mountains to come, he could move up on the classification.
Now at the bottom of this descent is the feed zone. What's going on there now?
Discovery wants to go through there first, get their feed bags before anybody else does, and avoid some of the crashes and chaos that we've seen in the feed zone previously. When the feed zone is on a climb or a false flat, it's easy to get your soigneur to hand the bag over because you're going a lot slower. But if it's on a flat road when they're racing hard, or on the descent like they have done sometimes, there's just no flat roads to put the feed zone in the right place. So you had to take your chances. The best is to take your chances from the front.
One beyond category climb complete. 4 men have distanced themselves from the peloton where Lance Armstrong comfortably rides. Back into this.
The most historic event of the summer, the cyclism returns to OLN. Lance is going for a record 7th win, and OLN's team of cycling experts have the inside track. Every morning, Paul Sherwen and Phil Liggett take you minute by minute through the live action. Each night, get expanded coverage with Al Troutwig and Bob Roll as they break down the leaders and preview the next stage. Plus, exclusive updates of Lance's ride of a lifetime. Witness Cyclism 2 Tour de France, live at 7:30 a.m. Eastern. Expanded coverage at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on OLN.
We're at the finish line in Briançon. There'll be a feed zone at the bottom of the descent. Then there'll be relatively flat cycling for about 12 or 13 miles. There'll be a race for the sprint. It'll be interesting to see who's involved in that. And then actually 2 climbs that make up the second big climb of this race. We reside in the finish line in a place we call the compound that moves every day. I think it's time for us to use our backstage pass presented by IBM with Kirsten Gunn.
Home away from home for 2,500 journalists and crew, the TV compound, or the Zone Technique, as it's called here in France, is where the magic happens for all live broadcasts. And while it doesn't look like much, this is the center of our universe for the entire Tour de France. Each day, the set of crews from some 20 countries have to to figure out how to fit 180 semi-trucks and vans into an area about the size of 2 football fields. In the mountains, it's much, much smaller. It's kind of like fitting huge puzzle pieces together. Technicians start negotiating spots around 4 a.m. They then must run lines for power, video, and audio. There are more than 60 miles of cable weaving through the compound. Trucks need to be expanded and leveled, sets reconstructed, chairs and cameras put in place, all before broadcasting can begin. And during the race, never a dull moment for the OLN crew.
That's our IBM Backstage Pass. It's interesting watching the cyclists go into their musettes, and they're a little picky like everybody else. There's some stuff in there they want, and some stuff they just get rid of right away.
Paolo Savidelli, the Italian winner of the Giro, saying in the papers a couple of days ago, after he was asked by some of the Italian journalists, you won the Giro, you're one of the biggest stars in Italian cycling, why don't you race for yourself in the Tour and get some stage wins or maybe a top 3 finish? Savidelli saying it's an honor to work for Lance Armstrong, to race for Lance, and to be on this team, and that's why he's here.
Lance Armstrong and Team Discovery, right where they were yesterday, where they've been since the beginning of the Tour, setting the tempo at the front. Everybody's really going to be tested again today. Day 2 in the Alps in Stage 11 from Courchevel to Briançon. And the climb up the Telegraph has begun. Galibier is next. It's all really part of the same climb. Al Troutwick, Bob Roll, Lance's longtime coach Chris Carmichael is here, as well as Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen, of course. And let's check the separation from the front of the peloton and all that Discovery pressure. And the 3-man break, they're gaining a few seconds here. It's not coming down.
It's not, but there's a long way to go out. This is a very, very long climb. I mean, they're still on the Telegraph. They haven't even really started up the Galibier yet. You know, and it gets hot up there too. It's sun out. When you start climbing the Galibier, there's no trees, and it's just you tend to bake in the sun.
Peloton now, 2:05. Vinokourov, Botero, and Pereiro starting to extend their advantage a little bit. This Discovery team maybe using too much energy to chase some riders that probably aren't contenders in the GC battle when we get through all the mountains and time trials back to Paris for the Tour, and maybe now starting to pay for that a little bit. Or have they just turned off the tempo a little bit so they have enough energy for throughout the rest of the Col de Galibier?
As you can see, Botero has rejoined these 3. That's pretty impressive.
Momentary difficulty. A lot of times when you're riding across the valley, you're putting out a certain amount of energy, and when you start up on the climbs, it takes a few kilometers to recover and find your climbing rhythm. So Botero initially dropped, has found a better way to get up the mountain, has found his rhythm, has gotten his heart rate back up, and he's rejoined Vinokourov and his own teammate, Oscar Pereiro. So Botero has not given up. Former world time trial champion, yellow jersey in the Tour, mountains champion in the Tour, and stage winner here in the Tour de France. So Santiago Botero, one of the biggest stars in cycling, and having a decent day after a real disappointing day yesterday. I think that the Phonak riders were stung by how good the Discovery team was. They had really high expectations coming into this race with 3 separate leaders, Landis, Botero, and Pereiro. Floyd Landis, the highest on GC of the group. Botero just right behind him, about a minute 4 seconds behind his teammate Floyd Landis. But Floyd has had a pretty easy ride, relatively speaking, of course, sitting in this group led by the Discovery team. Tricky Beltran now in the front. When you look at the composition of this team, it's no wonder that there's so many Discovery riders still in the front group. If T-Mobile had to do the same thing, they wouldn't be able to do it. You've got Vinokourov, Kloden, and Ulrich, the only riders on T-Mobile still lifting the rest. So if the roles are reversed, if one of the T-Mobile riders had the yellow jersey, they'd be very vulnerable to attacks.
Hey, Chris, how many recon rides would you say Lance has done on this particular climb?
Well, he did it one time this year. He's climbed the Galibier at least, I would say, 7 times.
Wow.
In reconnaissance over the last 7 years.
Once a year, that's about 6 too many for you.
Yeah, there's times where you have to get to it. It's interesting where it's placed from one valley to the next, and you know, a lot of times before you actually even start doing the recon of the Tour de France stages, you'll do a couple days training here in advance, and you'll end up doing that climb at least one time. You know, I'll tell you what's happening here is the Discovery team knows exactly how far ahead these guys are, and they're metering their energy that they're putting out. Johan Bruneel is giving instructions over the radio, telling the guys to either pick up the pace or slow down, and they're going to want to hold it at about 2 minutes and just kind of sit there through the course of the telegraph up probably a quarter of the Galibier, and then they'll slowly start chipping it away and bringing it back.
It's been holding fairly steady at about a 1 minute 50 and change difference.
An interesting thing last night, and talking with Lance, he was tired at the finish, but he said, look, you know, I asked him, I said, why don't you look like you could attack and gotten rid of most of those guys? Maybe Rasmussen would have stayed with you. And he said, you know, Chris, why did I need to do that? I was gaining time on all my rivals, and I still felt like I had probably 5 or 10% that I wasn't tapping into. Why go maximum when I was still gaining time?
So there was no part of him that was disappointed in not winning the stage?
Well, I mean, look, Lance Armstrong always likes to win.
Right.
And was he disappointed about winning the stage? Probably slightly, but you know, he was more excited about getting the yellow jersey and really gaining time on his rivals, and also, perhaps most importantly, was the incredible confidence the team got. I mean, those guys were just all-stars yesterday.
There's Paolo Salvadelli doing some domestique work.
A good problem to have if you're Johan Bruneel. A bad problem for Salvadelli. He has to take on about 10 bottles, but a good problem for Bruneel because he has that many riders still left in the front. Almost all the Discovery guys still taking turns at the front, so Salvadelli's gone back to the car, relay some drinks up to his teammates, able to carry a number of them.
Yeah, but how about Team Discovery? Your water-fetching guy is the Giro d'Italia champion. That's all.
That's a tough team to beat. It's tough if you're trying to attack the Discovery team because, like we saw on the Madeleine climb, Mancebo attacked, and the tempo that they were able to set demolished the field. And it's still a very select group chasing these riders right here.
Interesting thing here with Vinokurov. Lance has never really felt that Vino can be a true Tour de France champion because he thinks he has trouble on the real long climbs. A climb of about 10 to 15 minutes in length, he's one of the best. But once you start getting over 15 minutes, it gets more difficult on him, and I think we saw that happen yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see how he rides over these next few days, because now we're in the highest mountains of the Tour de France.
You know, it's funny you say that because about 3 or 4 minutes before Vinokurov just collapsed, they took a shot of him right behind Lance, and I thought, he's barely breathing. He looks great. And the next thing I knew, he was done.
Yeah. You can always see it. It happens in the pedaling first. Now, it starts... What happens is not as smooth, starts to get like almost ratchet pedaling, as though they're just pushing up, just pushing down, and they're not having a nice smooth stroke where they're pulling through bottom dead center of the pedal stroke and over top dead center, and it just gets to be almost like ratchet pedaling, and then boom, usually the guy's gone after that.
Well, here's Igor Martinez, who's been dropped by the lead 3. Talk about his pedaling and what you see.
Looks like he's
getting
out of the saddle, you know. He's clearly couldn't stay with the guys, so that's not a good thing.
We're nearing the summit of the Telegraph, but still to come 12 miles up to Galibier. Chris Carmichael is part of our coverage every day of the Tour de France. For more on Chris's training tips, go to www.trainright.com/OLM. We'll have more of Stage 11 after this. We're seeing pictures today, the likes of which define in the minds of the legions of Tour de France fans the beauty of the race. The winding roads, gorgeous blue skies, the Alps, the switchbacks, and eventually the barren top called Galibier. First a little teaser, a little something for the boys to get warmed up on called the Telegraph, then a little descent, and then 12 miles more to the highest point we will see in the Tour.
way above tree line, the Col de Galibier, and it just takes you forever to climb. It's so discouraging when you get to the top of the Telegraph to know that you still have an incredible amount of climbing left, and the tough guys come to the fore.
Today, Team Discovery even has more guys at the front of the peloton than they did yesterday, and they've let this three-man break go to 2:45 at the last time check, 2 minutes and 45 seconds away.
And when you see Savoldelli chit-chatting with Jose Azevedo, and you still have riders of the caliber of Tricky Beltran, George Hincapie, Jose Luis Rubiera, and Yaroslav Popovic still in the front, you understand that if they need to, and when they need to, those riders can come to the front and start doing an increased tempo, harder work, going a lot harder, and this climbing at a rate of speed that very few stars of the sport can match, let alone domestiques from the other teams. So tremendous amount of power and Discovery. You've got to respect them. Phonak on the attack today with Alexander Vinokurov, trying to regain some of their composure and momentum and morale after a terrible drubbing by Lance Armstrong on yesterday's stage to Courchevel, to all of the GC contenders that we thought about before the tour started. And that list now has maybe just one man, Ivan Basso, left on it. And another one has come forward, Michael Rasmussen, who sits just 38 seconds behind Lance Armstrong. If that continues to stay there, I think that they'll try to isolate Rasmussen and put some more time. 38 seconds is a pretty uncomfortable gap after a few stages in the mountains for Lance Armstrong.
Never get tired of watching the antics of these fans. And as you watch the number of fans and the vehicles on the side of the road grow, you might say, how do they all get down? Well, last night at Courchevel, we found out that sometimes you don't.
Very slowly. Many, many hours evacuating off of Courchevel and then a long drive to the finish in Briançon. Not so bad for the riders. They just had to ride down the hill. Azevedo going back to the team car. Warm day today, a lot of water being used by the teams, and so a lot of the domestiques for Lance Armstrong, Jose Azevedo, and Paolo Savoldelli, maybe the best two climbers on the team besides Lance, will go back and get some water from the team car. They don't have as far back to go as the other riders in the break because team cars are dependent on your first man's position on GC. So Lance Armstrong leading, Johan Brunel, the first car in line, the director's car. So it's an added advantage for the riders on Lance's team when they come back to get some water. They don't have to go through the full caravan of cars. They can get water right there, and then they don't have a very far chase to come back into the front and hand off those bottles to all their teammates.
Nearing the top of the Telegraph.
Botero going through there, a little sprint with Vinokurov, and immediately Pereira in trouble. So maybe he's worrying about the descent to come after going off the road on the descent of the Col de Madeleine. He was so very lucky to have slowed down enough to get back on the road without any damage or hurting himself, or I don't think we even see any crash damage on Pereira. So
he could easily be dead.
He could easily have gone off a cliff that has absolutely no shoulder and no room for error. He was lucky there was just a tiny strip of grass where he could slow down enough and get back on the road without any damage or crash problems, and caught the other riders in the breakaway. Igor Martinez was with them after the descent because he fought back too. Then those four riders went across the valley, and Martinez was quickly dropped with Botero, but Botero was able to regain his composure, catch back up to Vinokurov and Pereira, and now the three of them have gone over the Telegraph together and just in front, and it looks like Christophe Moreau there, and Rasmussen looking over to see if he'll sprint for some more King of the Mountain points here at the top of the Category 1 Col de Telegraph. See if Moreau is going to try to get some more, and he might be trying to pull himself into King of the Mountain contention along with Rasmussen. Rasmussen, a commanding lead in that competition. A little bit of picture break up there in the peloton. Motorbikes, helicopters, airplanes, and stationary cameras at the finish line, bringing you the most beautiful images of any race in the world, the Tour de France. Vinokurov getting some drinks handed up from Mario Kummer, the driver of the first car for T-Mobile, with the two Phonak riders, Pereira and Botero.
So this is the descent, goes on for a couple of miles, and then the climbing begins again. 12 more miles up the Galibier.
3 minutes now. So Lance and company letting the gap go out a little bit. I think they're conserving some of their strength. They've just got 2 men on the front, Rubiera and Tricky Beltran. Paolo Savidelli right behind them. Christophe Moreau, and he's on one side. Going to sprint. Looks like he's moving himself into position to try to take some King of the Mountain points on this Category 1 climb. Michael Rasmussen, the current leader of that competition, was on the other side. Lead of the peloton, 3 minutes, 3:01 now. And there's Moreau winding up the sprint. Rasmussen just saying, go ahead and take it. I don't want to sprint for this. I'll get some points because they let me go through. Having talked about it, Rasmussen maybe mystified as we were over the Madeleine climb, why that Moreau wanted to sprint for it.
Why is he doing it again?
Good question. He must want to get into this competition and feels like if he can match Rasmussen throughout the rest of the climbs of the Tour, he'll probably be able to beat him in the sprint to the line at the King of the Mountain competition. So maybe we can get a word with Christophe Moreau overnight and see why he's doing something that is not 100% popular with the riders. Rasmussen a little bit mystified, it seemed like, and strange that Moreau would go for that, but maybe he wants to try to be King of the Mountain when we get back to Paris. A lot of climbs in the Tour still to come.
38 miles to go, and there's a warm reception, as you can hear, for the peloton at the Telegraph. Here's Sam Posey, our resident historian, and T-Mobile has the history of the Tour. Today, the Galibier.
Let me take you back to the year 1911. The Tour de France was only 8 years old, and for the first time the riders tackled the high Alps, including this giant, the Galibier. Now, the road over the Galibier was among the highest in Europe, and although it was not paved, the snow you see here was common even in July. The condition of the road and the way a rider would tackle its sinewy slopes would shape the state of the Tour for years to come. The Galibier has never hosted a stage finish, but in the race's early years, a mountain this imposing could decide a race no matter where along the route it was placed. In 1911, Gustave Garrigou was forced to walk his bike partway up the Galibier, but still hung on to win the Tour. The real revolution, however, took place not with the riders, but with the bicycles. Bicycles had a single gear which riders could change only by changing the entire bike. Later, they were able to flip the rear wheel, which in effect gave them 2 gears and allowed them somewhat more freedom to adjust to the steepness of the climbs. Riders like Henri Pellissier in 1923 and Octavio Bottecchi in 1924 and 25 would use their mastery of these techniques to conquer the high mountains and win the Tour. In 1937, race director Henri Desgrange would legalize the rear derailleur. This innovation, combined with the improved road conditions and the elimination of mountain time bonuses, would greatly reduce the importance of intermediary climbs like the Galibier.
After you do about 20 Ks, you think to yourself, I must have climbed this mountain 5 times already, but you're still just over halfway there. It is a monster, but it's a part of the lore and the legend of cycling. And there is a little bit of a thrill when you get to the bottom. And you know, if you don't fall apart totally, you will have gotten over one of the historically significant climbs in the Tour de France.
Today, the Galibier often serves as a warm-up for mountaintop finishes at places like Alpe d'Huez and Les Deux Alpes. The evolution of team tactics has enabled riders to save their energy for the inevitable onslaught of the day's final climb. Occasionally, though, the Galibier has played a role in deciding the day's stage and the Tour itself. Bernard Hinault and Greg LeMond broke away over the Galibier en route to their arm-in-arm victory atop Alpe d'Huez in 1986, a win which helped seal LeMond's overall title. In 1998, Marco Pantani attacked on the Galibier, an unfathomable 48 kilometers from the finish, on the way to his stage victory at Les Deux Alpes, a feat which won him that Tour. Today, the Galibier stands as a monument to the Tour's founder, Henri Desgrange, and while it might not decide the race, this mountain will live in the minds of the riders who tackle it as a climb into history over one of the greatest peaks of the Tour.
That's Sam Posey with the history of the Tour presented by T-Mobile. And that climb up the Galibier is coming up next on the Tour in Prime Time.
Well, the split is now showing us 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Pereiro is just behind the two front runners. Even little Michael Rasmussen in that red-spotted polka dot jersey leader as King of the Mountains. I thought he was looking a little bit concentrated there, sitting behind Lance Armstrong. This is a good group. Alexander Valverde, who beat Armstrong to the line yesterday, wears a totally white jersey today, and he is also just up near the sharp end of this chase.
Armstrong knows every centimetre of these climbs. He's probably the only one of the major challengers, with Chechu Ribiera, with Tricky Beltran, who've been out and ridden all of these climbs. Not once, not twice, but 5 or 10 times. This is Beltran. Well, I'm not surprised, Phil. He has done an incredible amount of work on the front of the group. Now he's paid for it. Now all he can do is survive.
This is what happens with the Discovery Channel teammates of Armstrong, that they are there to do a job of work. He has paced Armstrong over the previous 2 mountains. He's reached the limit of his ability, he falls away. And we'll see this happen a lot now, as Armstrong will slowly become on his own towards the summit. Although I have a feeling he might keep a couple of guys with him here today. This is Ludovic Turpin.
Ludovic Turpin, and this is all because of the pace and the pressure being set by the guys from Discovery Channel. He cannot follow that pace anymore, but that's not really disgrace, because there's a lot of top riders in here. This is Kessler going out to the back. There's his number 13 upside down. He was the rider who had a dramatic crash in the Tour de France a couple of years ago. In fact, he's got a plaster on his nose there to help him breathe a little bit better. Everybody will want to breathe a bit better when we get up to the summit of this climb.
And look at this, Paul, because life is getting a bit rough now. This is Beltran, as he now decides to settle in for a lonely ride to the finish, but he'll have no problem. There's at least 120 riders behind him. This is Santiago Botero. He is in no man's land and driving now. And where is Vinokourov?
Well, he was the last winner. Let's
there?
not forget Vinokourov has gone. This is a man possessed here this afternoon. He can find himself completely moving up in the overall classification. If he can conserve the 3-minute advantage, he will leap from 16th place this morning right up into about 4th or 5th place tonight, and that might well be what Lance Armstrong is looking for, to get Ivan Basso, Christophe Moreau and Alejandro Valverde's team to come forward and take a bit of the pressure of the race.
Well, once word gets back to the main field and Lance Armstrong that Alexander Vinokourov has flown on his own, he might get a little bit concerned about this, because Vinokourov has done the ride of his life today after yesterday's battering. He's come out from the start and he's really raced, and he's heading up the Galibier here on his own.
This is the form that he showed us in the Dauphiné Libéré. He showed us that he wasn't afraid at all of these mountains. Now look at that. For the aficionados, by the way, that gearing at the back will probably be around about a 21, 22 tooth sprocket with 39 teeth at the front. That is a very small wheel. It's a very small ratio, and he is spinning. Now let's have a look at Lance Armstrong here. Hincapie looks calm and collected over there. Armstrong, face does not give anything at all away. He's in control. He's looking at the wheel of the riders in front of him. The man behind him there is Jaroslav Popovic. He's the man that will be called upon towards the summit of this climb to turn up the cranks just a little bit. But Armstrong must feel a little bit concerned about Michael Rasmussen, who's only 38 seconds behind him in the overall race.
Well, just looking here towards the back of the field, you get the idea of how the pace has been stepped up now. Sebastian Joly just hanging on. And number 86 here is Chris Horner of the United States. He had a great day today. He was in the move on the previous climb, but he now could be in a little bit of trouble hanging at the back of the group. That's a very select peloton. You need to go 3 minutes up the road to find Alexander Vinokourov. We race around the escarpment of the Col de Galibier, the highest mountain in this part of France.
Chris Horner, 33 years of age. He came over to France at the early part of his career for about 3 years and rode for the Française des Jeux. But since then, he went back to the United States, became the dominant rider there, and now he's finally had a crack at the Tour. He must be wondering why he never came to it before, because I think he's enjoying himself. I
agree entirely. And Vinokourov, his team car just came up there and said, "You're going good. It's good. You're still handling the group behind." Armstrong's peloton at 3:05 now, not getting any closer at the moment. Armstrong's domestiques, those teammates of his, are holding and just about containing Vino at the moment, but they're not getting any closer.
Well, Vinokourov has really turned up the cranks a fraction here, because a few moments ago he was in the company of Santiago Botero, who is there, he was in the company of Oscar Pereira, and he has blown them both away, and he's setting an incredible pace, still holding on to his gap. In fact, he's just extended it by a few seconds to 3 minutes and 15 seconds. I have to feel now, Phil, that Armstrong must start to react, because he can't let a man like this pull back that much time on one day.
3:15, plus there's a small time bonus to be had on the way to the finish at Moulin-Baron. He's taken 6 seconds already, so he could get 32 seconds in time bonuses, plus the 3 minutes over the field. What does that do?
Could pull him right up into between 4th and 5th place, in between Christos Moreau and Alejandro Valverde, completely back in the race, and that would put a big threat onto the shoulders of riders like Basso and Michael Rasmussen. Michael Bogard is a man who has been in this group for a long time. He was there holding on as long as he could to look after the man who's second overall, Michael Rasmussen. But we're now starting to see a serious sorting out in the group. I've got a funny feeling now, Phil, that the pressure is starting to be really cranked up.
Well, what a great battle we are now seeing here. Remember, the Col de Galibier also gives us the big prize, $6,000. That's about £4,500. The Henri Desgrange prize, the man that founded the Tour de France, is always awarded to the first rider over the highest climb of the race route. And this is it, the Col de Galibier. And there's a tribute on the Col de Telegraph to Henri Desgrange. Peloton still trying to stay in contention. As you look here now at all of the riders of Lance Armstrong, again driving the train. Armstrong number 1, 57 alongside him is Rasmussen, and then number 11 is Turo on the I don't know why I said
Dietrich Turo.
I've gone back 20 years, everybody. Jan Ulrich, I mean, and on his left was Floyd Landis. The men are still there, still looking at him, and he's still waiting.
Number 8 on the front there, Chechu Rubiera, getting out of the saddle, keeping the pace nice and high. They've only lost one man in the last 8 kilometers of this ascent, and that was Tricky Beltran. Beltran set an unbelievable pace for a long period of time, and they're all now starting to set themselves up to see whether or not they can pull this man back. Alexander Vinokourov is looking for the win today. There's the yellow jersey draped over the meadows, and there is the main field draped over these mountains.
As they cut through the camper cars who've been here all night awaiting the arrival of the riders, they're going to see a great man in Alexander Vinokourov as he continues now. This, in fact, is Botero, second on the road. Looking at the back wheel here of the man who's suddenly burning up the highway here on the Col de Galibier. He's shed his breakaway companions. He's done a lone sorto, really, since the race began. Vinokourov now is trying desperately to reach the top of the mountain, but he's thinking long term. He knows it's a 40-kilometer race for home once over the top.
Brave move. He's actually got about a 25-second advantage over this man, who was the last winner here in Briançon. That was back in 2000. That was the end of a very long breakaway. It's not exactly the same finish as it was on that occasion. We're actually just slightly outside of the time, 27 seconds to Botero. And the main field, the gap is still not really starting to come down very quickly.
We're talking 1 second here, 1 second there. The move is not yet on as Botero keeps a nice little tempo. This guy is a climber. He hasn't shown us the great climbing form, and he won the title a couple of years ago. But he's not afraid of these mountains. Alexander Vinokourov most certainly isn't afraid of them either. He's finished third in the Tour de France in the past. And he's only ever won one stage, and that was at Gap, which is just over the valley from where we are today. 7 kilometers to climb to the top of this mountain, and Vinokourov, I think, is going to be tough to pull back.
He's riding perfectly. Look at that. He's got a chance here to look over. Yeah, he's looking over to see where the main field are. It's always good morale when you're in the mountains like this, when you're leading, when you've got the pedaling style that this man has got, because you can judge your effort. He is certainly not weakening at all, this man. There's the long horn of the Lone Star State. He's got to wait for about 3 minutes before Lance Armstrong comes, but Vinokourov is actually looking very comfortable today compared with the style that he had yesterday when he was a broken man.
Here's the Colombian supporters cheering him on now. and they're making him get out of the saddle and dig a little bit deeper. The peloton, which contains Lance Armstrong, 5th man in the long line. The other 4 are his team. Drive on here. Vinokurov is superb today. He is actually bringing this race back to his front room. We thought when he lost 5 minutes yesterday, he was out. He has wasted no time fighting back, and you know there's still mountains left in this race.
There's still a lot of mountains left in this race. We have a hard stage tomorrow, a flat day on Friday, then 2 big Pyrenean stages over the weekend. This group was 40 riders strong at the start of the race, and then after that, there's only 26 men left.
26 men, followed by number 26, Carlos Sastre. This man's made of rubber. He's yo-yoed on and off the back all day long, but he's still there. Just look at this. They can't run very long with Vinokurov. He's actually flying up this mountain just now. He'll be responding to all of the cheers of the crowd. We're beginning to get dizzy now. You can get some feel of height with that picture.
We certainly can. We're climbing up to the real high spot of the Tour this year, 2,645 metres. And Alexander Vinokurov is a man, we were talking about a renaissance, we were talking about a divine intervention. Well, I think this man here has certainly looked to that, because he is climbing up here with a vengeance from yesterday. He wants to write himself back into the Tour. He doesn't want to be low down in 16th place overall. He wants to climb right up into 3rd or 4th if he can.
6 kilometres from the summit, that's 46 kilometres from the finish, and still we see the Norwegian flags. It's a bit of a wait now for Thor Hushovd, the only Norwegian rider in the race. And still ahead too, number 61, Santiago Botero, still responding to the crowds here. A fully international crowd, everybody shouting at the riders they support. Armstrong's not short of supporters, and we're not short of fighters in this race either, because Vinokurov has refused to lay down and go away.
Here.
Everybody now starting to feel the pain of this climb as we get inside the final 5 kilometres up to the summit, and we climb up into an area where the air is starting to become just that little bit more rarefied. He's not quite got distance from the group, Andreas Kloden. He's just hoping to stay there. Bit of panic in the front there as the motorbikes are waiting to get the shots of the Tour de France. They're trying to see if they will find who is going to be the first man to make the move. I think everybody at a pace like this is just happy to be there.
Just doing a quick count now. I made it 27 riders now left in this peloton of elite cyclists in the Tour de France. They'll be concerned about the whereabouts of here, Alexander Vinokurov. Is he getting 5 kilometres to go to the summit? That seemed to take a long while to get to us.
It's a long way.
5Ks half an hour ago.
It's a horrendous climb. This really is a horrendous climb, because it goes on and on and on. And every time you come around a corner, you think you're going to see the banner that says 1 kilometre to go, and all of a sudden they throw 5 at you.
Alexander Vinokurov is past the 5 kilometres to go. The sign over there says 102 years. The Tour de France has been around since 1903, and Vinokurov is the latest of a long line of great men who have ridden this mountain, the Col de Galibier, and he's riding it very, very quickly now. Valois is where the climb starts, and that's at the foot, depending which way you go, of course, of the Col de Telegraph. Looking down the Col de Galibier now, at this time, usually in May, this would be all snow. It's cleared miraculously for the Tour de France in July. Our camera hovers down on a rider from Kazakhstan. A few years ago, he would have been classed as a Russian cyclist because he would have been a member of the Soviet Union, and he wouldn't have been in the Tour de France. But times change, and here he is now heading the field.
Heading the field with a massive margin. He started the day in 16th place, 6.5 minutes in arrears. But today, with this performance, if he can hold on to a huge chunk of this time, he could move right back up into the top 5. Big George Hincapie now has come to the front to set the tempo. This man has developed himself into a climber for the month of July. He's a man who is better suited to the flatter races like the Tour of Flanders in the north of France and Paris-Roubaix. He's a man now, when we come to the month of July, we know he's going to ride well in the mountains for Armstrong, and that's what he's doing. He may well be the next rider to give his all for the leader.
And the boy in the red spotted jersey there, bad attack of measles, but he's fine. This is, in fact, Michael Rasmussen. who's consolidated his lead in the King of the Mountains, scoring well today. Santiago Baterra's moved up to third there. But if you watch the boy in the white jersey here, Alejandro Valverde, who won yesterday, he rides a bigger gear and he rides it with great confidence. He is not trying today. He's still cruising. And it looks here as though Cloden is just about hanging on. Well, Alexander Cloden, I think, has worked very hard to get himself into any shape at all to ride this. But you know, sometimes if you don't get the big form early, the mountains one after another, and you get just too tired to go on. It's looking a bit ragged at the back, while Alexander Vinokurov is creating big damage today. There's Times Square. I hope everybody there is enjoying the coverage here on OLN as Armstrong has his hands full today. We'll be back. There is the zigzags to the top of the Col de Galibier. Normally the barren rock is covered in snow for most of the year. We should still see a lot of it around as we go down.
We should see a fair amount of it down. And that year in 2003, by the way, when Alexander Vinokurov won that stage into Gap, he went on to finish in third place overall.
Well, this has been a climb and a half for him, because they started with about 2:45 the gap. It's now 2:59. It went out to 3 1/4. Vinokurov is riding superbly, but they don't want to push him. He'll get a penalty for that.
The amazing thing about the sport of professional cycling is the fans definitely turn out from all of the different nations. We've seen Danes, we've seen Americans, we've seen the French and the Belgians and the Germans at the side of the road, but they encourage each and every one of these riders, because most of them know what sort of pain they're going through. There was a Kazakhstan flag at the side of the road.
I've seen the flag of Kazakhstan. It has a bright yellow sun in the middle of that turquoise flag, and that'll give him some support now.
It will give him some support now, because he's probably carrying the hopes of a nation on his shoulders as he gets slowly but surely to the summit of this climb. Unfortunately, though, once he gets to the top of the climb, he's still got 40 kilometres to go to the finish. Fortunately, most of those are downhill.
Slip in the top gear, take a few risks, I think, is the order of the day. And he should do 40 kilometres, which is 25 miles, in probably around 40 minutes today.
He will hammer down the slopes of this climb away from the Galibier. He goes down to the top of the Col de Lautaret, and then it's a very fast descent. Not such a technical descent once he gets to the Lautaret, where he'll be able to touch speeds of pretty close to 70 or 80 kilometres an hour.
Just over 1 kilometre remains of the climb of the Col de Galibier. He's going to win the prize. He's going to be first over the top. Baterra was with him at the bottom. So too was Pereiro. They got dispatched. These are the determined riders now of Discovery, while all of the others still follow Lance Armstrong. He hasn't made a move, but there's going to be one terrific chase once we get over this mountain.
There'll be a huge chase, and I wonder if Alejandro Valverde will get his teammates up to the front. He's got Francisco Mancebo in the group, because if they could ever bring back this man, Valverde would be the great man to take out the sprint. 2 stage wins back-to-back, but they're going to have to do something extraordinary special to catch this man from Kazakhstan. He's looking now. There it is. There's the banner which indicates 1 kilometre to go.
1,000 metres to top the climb. He'll be profiting by the tune of 6,000 extra dollars. That's a bonus plus the prize as well. He'll do very well for the team, but he's more thinking now of doing very well for himself. He's got 40 kilometres downhill. The hill has eased a little bit here, and still they paint the flags of Norway on the rocks, so although it's an actual big flag. As Vinokurov of Kazakhstan, the champion of his country for the first time in his career. He's only ever won 1 stage of the Tour de France in his life. He's finished 3rd overall to Lance Armstrong. Armstrong has always said how worried he was about this rider, but yesterday I believe Armstrong must have thought he'd finished him off.
Well, I think he put enough time between himself and Alexander Vinokurov as he wanted to, but today Alexander Vinokurov is grabbing back about 3 minutes. This is back in the team cars, and this is one of the teammates of Ivan Bassa. I think it's Carlos Sastre who will pick his way back up through there to try and hand a drink over to his team captain. Now at the back of the group here, I'm looking through to see if I can see the Lotto jersey of Cadel Evans, and I couldn't see it.
Well, they're saying he's in there. We've had no camera to prove it or not prove it, so let's hope he is, because he's the top Australian rider at the moment. As now the road narrows and he climbs to the summit.
Well, he's 2 minutes and 53 seconds still ahead of Lance Armstrong's group, so over the summit of this climb, this should seriously be enough to hold on to the victory of the stage, but more importantly to him, how much of that time can he conserve down towards the finish?
The big Swedish flag there, well, that's for Magnus Backstedt. He's going to be another half hour, maybe 45 minutes to come up yet. He's in the autobus with all the sprinters today. He'll be fighting elimination. Let's hope he makes it. I'm sure he will, because he's having a great tour. But look at this now. This is going to drag Botero up, but gone is Alexander Vinokurov.
But watch out, because the first part of the descent off the summit of the Galibier down to the summit of the Col de l'Autoret is very technical. And we noticed last time that, in fact, Santiago Botero went downhill a lot better than Vinokurov. He's less than a minute behind him, and that is a gap that is feasible to pull back.
In all honesty, I think Vinokurov will need Botero to catch up with him, because two might have a chance. Surely he can't hold all of the race off Alexander Vinokurov. Up towards the summit, the white jersey on the far left at the front is the man who won yesterday, Alejandro Valverde. He's still riding alongside Lance Armstrong, who has not made a move.
Well, Botero is only 43 seconds behind Alexander Vinokurov at the summit of this climb. So I think Botero's got a very good chance of making the contact on the descent. There is the summit there. It's a long kilometre, this, isn't it? You think it's only 1,000 metres, but I think maybe at the top of the Alps here they stretch it out a fraction.
I think they use a different tape measure. But the crowd here standing up, every flag. This is such a worldwide happening, this event now. It's hard to hear a French word spoken on occasions on these mountains, because the stars of the Tour de France these past 20 years have not spoken French. And here comes another one that doesn't speak French when he does. In fact, it's not his native tongue. Alexander Vinokurov, as he races towards the summit of the top of the Col de Galibier. The trees on the horizon don't grow because they're people just trying to get a look at the race going by. They're cutting their way through now, and the adrenaline must be pumping through him. 1/3 of a kilometre to go.
How happy is he going to be when he gets over to the summit of this climb? The people have turned out. Most of these people actually camped out last night so they could witness the Tour de France going over its high spot, the Col du Galibier. And this man, who started off his life in a French team, Team Casino, a little shake of the hands there. He knows he's got himself to the summit, but I wonder if he knows just how close behind him Santiago Botero is.
He might, but he's over the top, first place, and he wins the Henri Grand Special Prize of the year for the highest spot of the Tour de France. And look at this now, Michael Rasmussen. He is turning out to be one superstar, this boy. We didn't see him go, but he's gone.
Well, Armstrong dare not let Michael Rasmussen take too much of an advantage, because Rasmussen is only 38 seconds behind Armstrong in the overall classification. Here is Botero now, whipping his way through the crowd. He is thinking about trying to make contact with Vinokurov at the front, while behind there's a little bit of drama coming into this race for Armstrong.
Rasmussen has begun to believe in himself. He's a king of the mountains so far, but he's only second, 38 seconds behind Lance Armstrong. And there's bonuses at the finish today. Here he comes, 31 years of age he is, but he's a newcomer to the world of road racing, a former world mountain bike champion. Michael Rasmussen is something else this tour. He has found legs that we've never seen before. He is racing to the summit now, currently in 3rd place. He's showing Christophe Moreau why he needn't have bothered for the earlier points.
Absolutely, but what he's also doing is riding away from Lance Armstrong. Armstrong won't panic, though, because, Phil, there's 40 kilometres to go from the summit of this climb all the way down into Briançon, and Armstrong has still got 3 very strong teammates around him, so he'll be able to chase down this man. But if you remember a couple of days ago, when he escaped on the road into Mulhouse, Jens Voigt and Christophe Moreau couldn't pull him back.
And it's worth remembering right now, there's about 15 riders left in the peloton, the select 15 boys, right up the slopes there, in amongst the crowd. Somewhere is Michael Rasmussen. Sitting here at the back of the race is number 23, which is Bobby Julich, and he again confirms that this is one American with some good form this year, riding alongside his team captain Ivan Basso. He's staying in a top flight position in the Tour de France. Cadel Evans is also down there, riding very, very well now. Looking into this group, Leonardo Pipoli is the boy in yellow. He again is sending a big surprise for his team. This man, the Dane, and there's all the Danish countrymen, they've all pulled on the polka dot jerseys he gained a couple of days before the rest day. He comes up to the summit, he'll go over in 3rd place, but more importantly, this man could be the next leader of the Tour de France.
Well, let's see what the clock stops at there. It's 2:24 for this man who has a 38-second deficit on Lance Armstrong, and Christophe Moreau, despite the fact that Rasmussen has gone, is going out to try and get himself a few more points. But I think we're going to be in for a fairly hairy chase on the descent of this mountain, because as we cross the line there, it's 2:42, so he's pulled back a good 20 seconds on Lance Armstrong.
We are over the top of the Col de Galibier. Alexander Vinokourov has gone down about 2.5 minutes ahead of anybody. Paterno is chasing him. Rasmussen has gone over 18 seconds ahead of Lance Armstrong. That means he's only 20 seconds off his yellow jersey. Although I think he will wait for the chase. We'll see.
Well, tactically, that would be the best move to make, because there is still a very long way to go. There is Andreas Kloden coming across the line there with Michael Rogers. That's 3 minutes and 18 seconds since the leader, Alexander Vinokourov, crossed.
Well, just look at the chase going on now. This is the leader going down the mountain. Alexander Vinokourov has been a race leader all day today on the highway today. He must watch himself going down. Santiago Paterno, I think, will take a few more chances. Lance Armstrong isn't so much concerned about Vinokourov as to the whereabouts now of Michael Rasmussen. This is going to be one big finish. Everybody in Times Square, enjoy it as the race is going home today to Briançon. We'll be there in about 40 minutes. We'll take a break.
Cycling fans watching stage 11 of the Tour de France on OLN in Times Square today. And taking it all in. It's a battle of will. It's a battle of burning muscles. It's a battle of heart. It's Santiago Botero and Alexander Vinokourov trying to distance themselves from the peloton and make all their hard work over two of the tallest mountains in the Tour pay off. Discovery and Lance Armstrong in full aerodynamic attack mode to slow them down. Now, as far as Vinokourov is concerned, a short while ago, he had a rattling GPS device come off on his rear wheel. It threatened to get ripped apart in the spokes or maybe the derailleur, who knows. But at a high speed, approached by the support vehicle, an unbelievable snip job, and they removed it. So he is good to go.
Minute 52 now, the gap coming down. E.S. Baleares now involved in the chase because Alejandro Valverde is still in the front group, the fastest man in this group by a long shot. They have a great chance to win another stage if they can close a minute 52 to these two men, Botero and Vinokourov. Botero has won in Briançon before. Vinokourov trying to salvage a little bit of glory for the T-Mobile squad. So a great battle in the mountains today, an incredible descent by Botero. Here's the peloton now coming through with 10 Ks to go. Lance Armstrong tucked right in there. We'll see if the E.S. Baleares help of the Discovery team can bring that gap down a little bit more. Lance doesn't mind giving a little bit of time away to Botero. I don't think he would have his druthers, however. He would like to have Vinokourov back in the fold. Bernard Thévenet from this region, twice winner of the Tour de France, and must have been 30 years ago that he won it, beating the great Eddy Merckx. 1975 and 77, the great Bernard Thévenet, a commentator now for French TV, and had the honor of speaking to him on the set last year at the stage of La Mongie, where he won his first mountain stage in the Tour.
Final miles just on the outskirts of Briançon. Santiago Botero erasing Alexander Vinokourov's 1-minute lead simply on the descent from the Galibier.
We'll have to see what kind of cooperation these two athletes do. Botero not nearly as fast as Vinokourov in the sprint. Vinokourov is going to need Botero to help get to the finish line if either one of these men are going to have a chance for the stage win. If you're Santiago Botero, you want to do a lot less work than Vinokourov and be a little bit fresher for the sprint. If you're Vinokourov, you're in a little bit of a dangerous situation. If you try to wait for Botero to come through, you risk losing the stage and being caught by the chasers. 1 minute 51 down right now, led by the Discovery Channel team, as we have seen. When they were U.S. Postal, and now with the Discovery team, the top team in this race, there can be no doubt about it.
A lot at stake for Botero and Vinokourov. Botero trailed the yellow jersey by 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Vinokourov 6 minutes and 32 seconds. The amount that they finish in front of Lance Armstrong is the amount that they decrease their deficit. Do you think Discovery misplayed this a little bit? I know they can't answer every single attack, but this attack, way back when, before the Telegraph and the Col de Madeleine, felt like it was real because of who was in it.
Vinokourov and Mancebo and Roberto Eras, Oscar Pereiro and Santiago Botero. Vinokourov also in that initial attack many, many miles ago on the Madeleine. Discovery allowing them a little bit of leeway, brought it back because I think of the presence of Francisco Mancebo more than anybody. He's in 5th place on GC. They wanted him back in the fold when he was dropped by the 4 leaders that went forward there, including the teammate of Botero, Oscar Pereiro, and Vinokourov, and Egoy Martinez. I think Discovery a little more content to have that composition of riders because Vinokourov is many minutes down, 6.5 minutes down on the start of the stage. They want to keep it close, but there was a great climb by Vinokourov, Botero, and Pereiro on the Galibier, and I think that honestly, Discovery wanting to keep as many riders as they could do without giving up too much time for this long run-in to Briançon. We're in the valley roads, false flat, fast descent, but you need teammates around Lance Armstrong for the many kilometers before the finish from the top of the Galibier.
And still, we haven't had a sniff 3 miles to the finish line of a real move from Basso, Ulrich, Cloden.
I think those athletes just happy to be able to stay in the front with Lance Armstrong. Hope he'll show some weakness eventually, but yesterday and today has been no such hope for the peloton. Vinokourov, the only man really that factors in the horizon of the GC, at least on Lance Armstrong's radar, having the courage to go out and do a huge escape. He's trying for the stage win, and the pace is keeping Leonardo Piepoli right there on the back of the group. Ulrich is still in there. Cloden has fought his way back, all chasing these 2 men, Santiago Botero and Alexander Vinokourov. This is going to be a real fight all the way to the finish line. Just the last few kilometers, they're going to stay away in the gap, probably about 1 minute by the time they get to the line. There's also going to be a time bonus for these 2 riders. So this has been an incredible raid by Alexander Vinokourov.
Damage control for Team Discovery. Lance Armstrong fortunate to have 4 teammates to pace him and the yellow jersey to the finish line. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen will take it to that line when we come back.
These are the 2 leaders now. The narrowness of Briançon. This crowd has seen the Tour de France 31 times. Now they're seeing it come through once more time, with all of the big names who have ever ridden this race coming into the finish. Just look at the crowd here now, inside the 3 kilometre mark. Well, they will be. There it is. Long straight road here. Then they will make a right flick. Then they will run down the back of our commentary position to line up towards the finish. The face here is Santiago Botero. Alexander Vinokourov, even when he suffers, this man never looks bad. As they race now behind our commentary position, we could just about see them by the television camera motorbikes, which means that they will now make the sharp turns to line up for the finish. They're running down the river here in Briançon.
Well, they are still pushing. Neither rider actually shirking the pace, and I think that goes back to the fact that they spent a couple of years together. They were on the same team. They don't want to play any dirty tricks on each other. They will ride it down and sprint it out man for man. They will share the pacemaking up until the final moment. You can see Santiago Botero is seriously grimacing in second position there. These riders have made a great effort this afternoon. They're looking now at these kilometers as they tick by, and the kilometers are ticking by at 1 minute and 4 seconds. That's 60 kilometers an hour, and still they are not desisting because they know that Armstrong's group is closing back on them to 1 minute and 30 seconds.
The last time we came here in 2000, it was the rider in second position who won, Santiago Botero. We're now looking for the 2 kilometre point, and these two are looking for the 1 kilometre point now as we race into the town. And Santiago Botero trying to be a man to do the double. He has yo-yoed on and off the leaders all day. He finally got back to Alexander Vinokourov, and they have come off the mountains together. They are 1:35 ahead of Lance Armstrong and his group, so they are taking taking time back. But right now, they're more concerned with who gets the win.
That's what the game is all about here as they take this left-hand bend. They're lining themselves up for the finishing straight. There's a roundabout to go through. Then there you can see the Flamme Rouge over the finishing line. That will indicate there's 1,000 meters to go. And once they get under that, the road will bend round a fraction. But they know now that the race is won. They know the race is in the bag. But who is going to take it? I have to think it's going to be Mr. number 19.
Well, what a wonderful crowd here. Two great riders in the true history of the Tour de France today. Biançon has seen all the finest winners over its history, the 32nd time that the Tour has finished here, and these two boys have lifted the reputation in the mountains. It's a shame that one of them has to lose now, and it looks as though Vinokourov is going to manoeuvre Santiago Botero into the lead. They're both okay sprinters. They're far from being the big sprinters that we normally see, so it's much more difficult for them. Vinokourov, he should be working at a casino. His face never tells you anything. He takes a look at Botero. Botero is just looking at his front wheel here, waiting for him to make the move. He just keeps staring at that wheel. And the minute that Vinokourov jumps, Botero will go with him. There's a tense moment. He's easing him slightly to the centre. They're now bringing up the speed to the line. Vinokourov is about to make his move, and Botero, I think, is ready for him. This is going to be an amazing finish. We're almost on the finishing line here, as now the puffing and blowing of Alexander Vinokourov, and I don't know if Botero has got it. No, he hasn't. Vinokourov is coming clear, and he's going to get a well-deserved victory here. The man of the day, the man of the Tour today, and he is the winner on the line. Well done, Alexander Vinokourov.
What a superb move there by Alexander Vinokourov, but a very tactical move too. And I'll tell you one thing, they lost a little bit of time over that last 500 meters, but Vinokourov gets himself the 22nd time bonus, but I think he was really only worried about the sprint at the end of the day. And look at this, Armstrong's troops are still leading them up to the finishing line. On the front, 4 riders from Team Discovery Channel. Armstrong is very much there in 4th place. You can just see Acevedo swinging off there. Paolo Salvadelli now taking it up. George Hincapie right up there as well. Everybody very happy, I think, Phil, to be in this group here this afternoon. It's not going to be a fast sprint, this, but I would suspect that Alejandro Valverde shouldn't be too very far away from it. Hincapie takes up the pacemaking. Armstrong is looking very attentive there.
Well, as Hincapie is still trying to finish this off for Lance Armstrong, there's still a 3rd place bonus at stake, which would a little bit nullify the win bonus of Vinokourov. Even Rasmussen's trying to get in now. The white jersey of Alessandro Valverde is in a bad place. He's tucked off to the right of our picture. Hincapie coming now as they go through now. Is Valverde going to get himself out? He's chosen Jan Ulrich's wheel to burst forth. This is going to be a finish for Lance Armstrong. As he comes up to the line, he sits up and he lets Christophe Moreau take the 3rd. I think it's Basso or Bobby Julie. Basso, I think, gets 4th.
Well, good move by Moreau just at the end there, but Armstrong, I think, wanted to finish that off for his boys because they have done a splendid job for him here this afternoon. The winner of the stage, Alexander Vinokourov, has got himself a very good victory, and I should think that will raise the morale back in T-Mobile's camp because they were not very happy campers last night. They were completely blown away by the first big mountain stage, but this man, he's put them back into the camp, and he's now put them back into the riders who've taken a stage victory at the Tour de France so far this season. Good win for Alexander Vinokourov.
It was a great win indeed for Alexander Vinokourov. Lance Armstrong now having to just get himself washed up, ready for the presentation of another maillot jaune for him, as then he will pull on another yellow jersey. He was never in danger of being lost today, but he certainly did a terrific ride to close the gap down in the end. No big time gains, but what a great day out it was for Alexander Vinokourov of Kazakhstan, who refuses to lie down despite the tough ride yesterday. These are pictures, by the way, still on top of the Col de Glibier. This is the autobus. There's the big sprinter in green, Tommy Bonen. They still have 40 kilometers to go to the finish. They are going to be behind by about 50 minutes today. The winner of the stage, he last won in Gap, but just over the road in Briançon, Alexander Vinokourov. That was a great ride for him. I wonder what the people in Times Square think about that as Armstrong stays in yellow.
After being victimized yesterday in Stage 10, all Alexander Vinokourov can do to get back in the Tour de France is attack. And attack he did. With Santiago Botero charging to the line. They helped keep the distance from Lance Armstrong and company, but he only gained 1:15 and a time bonus. Still, he'll take it. A stage win, especially an historic stage like this.
This is a great stage. Over the Galibier into Briançon has been a part of cycling for nearly 100 years. Vinokourov, the latest recipient of a great honor.
Here's how the final results look in Stage 11, brought to you by Pacific Life. Alexander Vinokourov, then Santiago Botero, then Christophe Moreau, who got involved with time bonuses and moved into third over Bobby Julich. Some names you might not recognize surrounding Lance Armstrong today, but Lance did exactly what he needed to do. He finished with the group, as Discovery was an aerodynamic machine in the last 18 miles. What does it all mean? It means Lance Armstrong wears the yellow jersey for the 72nd day in his Tour de France career.
Incredible. He spent over 2 months in the yellow jersey, and just one day is a career maker for a lot of riders. The man right behind him is on the all-time list, just ahead of Lance Armstrong.
They kept their eyes on Michael Rasmussen, who broke away to get some King of the Mountain points, but then got right back in behind Lance. This is brought to you by Foster's. 38 seconds is a cushion there. Now, what about the guys who made their move today? Well, they improved themselves, obviously, by a minute 15 plus the time bonuses. But still, when you look at the guys who finished today, Vinokourov and Botero, they still have big time deficits. For Botero, it's 3:48, and for Vinokourov, it's well over 4 minutes. When the stage was over, Lance Armstrong spoke to our Craig Hummer.
Lance, you yourself said Vino probably had a bad day yesterday. Today he proved you right. Talk about the strategy to let him go and let him go early.
Well, we knew he was going to attack today, and we had a good feeling he was going to attack early. But when, at this point in the game, when somebody's 6 or 7 minutes behind, we can't worry much about that. We have to do what's important, and the most important thing is keep as many guys together as possible. So we kept him there 2-3 minutes, and worked out perfect for us. To get to the finish line with a little more than a minute behind. For a day like that, I don't know if I would. I don't think I'd make that trade.
It looked as though the team was possibly setting you up for that final sprint bonus at the end. Describe what happened in that final kilometer.
No, we just Johan told the guys to ride to the finish. To get it as far down. Because it was 3 minutes and then 2 minutes, and obviously it almost came back to a minute. So just to keep it right around a minute. So he told them just ride to the line.
All right, I know you said tomorrow's a tough stage. We'll see you at the line.
Yeah, thank you.
Tomorrow, the move out of the Alps with plenty of good climbing, not Category 1 or beyond category, but plenty of good climbing. Lance said it worked out perfectly for Discovery, and we've talked about this. When you make your move, make sure you get the big result like Lance did yesterday. And I think what he's saying about 1:15, that's not enough for all the hard work that Vinokourov and Botero did today.
When you think about the amount of damage that type of effort is going to make to Vinokourov and Botero, you get the sense that they're just going for the stage win. Both of them very desperate. Botero, an unbelievably scintillating descent off of the Galibier to catch back up to Vinokourov, and then Vinokourov vanquishing him in the sprint. But the amount of energy required just to get a minute 15 on Lance Armstrong, they will have to pay for that in the days to come.
All right, now Vinokourov, does he have to pay mightily in a stage like tomorrow, or does he wait now and recoup until the Pyrenees?
Honestly, I think that the first day in the Alps was an abnormality, considering his form, his strength and power, and his desire to do a good Tour de France. I think he'll be able to hang in there tomorrow. Botero may be another story. We might see him lose some serious chunks of time.
All right, tomorrow's stage 12. We've moved past halftime here in the Tour de France. It's brought to you by Mitchum.
Here's a stage for tomorrow, moving away from Briançon into Digne-les-Bains, due south. Coming out of the big alpine climbs, we will have some very tough climbs out on the course. Lance Armstrong himself saying that he rode this and was a little bit surprised at how tough all of these climbs are. Category 4s, 3s, 2s, no 1s or HC climbs into Digne-les-Bains, brought to you by Mitchum.
It's all coming up tomorrow on OLN. By now, you know the deal. Our live coverage begins, however, a little earlier tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. on the East Coast. Get up early or stay up late on the West Coast. And expanded coverage every night in prime time for everybody. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Pacific. Alexander Vinokourov with tremendous heart. Somehow his muscles overcame his problems of yesterday. He was the one who took the break. He was the one who took the stage. Our OLN team is outfitted by LL Bean. Visit them at llbean.com and visit us for more on the tour and all you'll see at OLN at olntv.com. Outdoor Investigations battle for the national parks up next here on OLN. Thanks for joining us in prime time. We'll see you tomorrow for Stage 12.